Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. The US President Donald Trump has called for more defense spending on military hardware and urged NATO allies to shoulder greater responsibility for Europe's security. He praised time NATO summit, saying tremendous things had been achieved. At the NATO summit, Secretary General Mark Rutte compared Trump to a daddy breaking up a schoolyard fight after the president used profanity to describe the Iran-Israel conflict and compared US strikes to Hiroshima in 1945, according to reports. Macron has announced that France is finalizing its own assessment of damage to Iran's nuclear sites following the US and Iran's conflicting claims over the damage from the recent strikes. Meanwhile, the Kremlin said it's too early to assess the full impact, according to the Kremlin aide, as the tensions in the region remain high. Seven Israeli soldiers have been killed in a single blast in southern Gaza, according to media reports. Meanwhile, life in Israel is returning back to normal after a ceasefire with Iran, with schools reopening and citizens celebrating relative calm. Archbishop Bhagat Galtsyanian has been arrested for Armenia for allegedly plotting a coup and planning a terrorist attack, according to the investigative committee. Prime Minister Pashinyan praised security after a second high-profile government critic was arrested this month. A South Korean court has rejected a special prosecutor's request to arrest former President Yoon Suk-yeol in a martial law-related investigation. Yoon has agreed to appear for questioning on Saturday, according to local reports. UN nuclear chief Rafael Grossi warned that much of Iran's highly enriched uranium may have survived the US and Israeli airstrikes, as it could have been moved early on. He emphasized the urgent need for IAEA inspectors to return and verify the remaining stocks, according to UN. The Kenyan government banned live coverage of anniversary protests against last year's deadly tax demonstrations, drawing condemnation from Amnesty International. Meanwhile, the demonstrations turned violent, with police firing tear gas and at least 10 people hospitalized with gunshot injuries, according to media reports. Now we have breaking news. Russian President Vladimir Putin will skip next week's BRICS summit in Brazil due to the risk of arrest over an ICC warrant issued for war crimes related to Ukraine. The Kremlin confirmed he will join via video link, citing Brazil's unclear stance on the warrant as a key factor. Now we move on to NATO. Speaking at the NATO summit, US President Donald Trump has warned that a new conflict between Israel and Iran could erupt perhaps soon, despite both sides being tired and ready to step back. He also reaffirmed calls for NATO members to shoulder more defense responsibility and boost military spending. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, speaking on the sidelines of the NATO summit, said the alliance deterrence capabilities have just gone up substantially and called it a crucial step. He confirmed that Canada's review of its F-35 fighter jet purchase plan will be completed by the end of summer, and that discussions with European partners on fighter jets and submarines are underway. Carney also said that Canada will look to make adjustments to its defense procurement rules, including buying more quickly and favoring domestic production. He added that Canada would have preferred a special NATO session dedicated to Ukraine. Meanwhile, Germany's Friedrich Merz announced that the Coalition of the Willing, a group of NATO nations ready to deepen support for Ukraine, will hold a coordination video call in the coming days. He said he met US President Donald Trump on the sidelines and urged tougher sanctions on Russia, while thanking Turkish President Erdogan for his mediating role. Merz reaffirmed that Trump had made very clear his support for NATO's core defense pledge under Article 5. This comes as Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said his country would meet the defense spending target with 2.1% of GDP. Though he described that level as sufficient, realistic, and compatible with the welfare state. Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte spoke highly about Trump's role in pushing NATO forward, saying he deserves all the praise. He declared that Putin's goal to divide the West has failed, pointing to Sweden and Finland joining NATO and the 5% defense plan as signs of growing unity. On the other hand, in a crucial sideline meeting, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has met with US President Donald Trump, according to Ukrainian spokesman. Now we have guests joining us for this discussion. Peter Cordillo is a chief market economist at Spartan Capital Securities, live from New York. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. President Trump has said that a new Israel-Iran war could erupt perhaps soon. Is this a genuine intelligence-based warning or political messaging, according to you?
Well, I think it's a political message, there's no question about it, but I also think that if you look at the markets, especially the oil market, you'll see that even if they do begin some sort of new attacks on each other, that the United States is not likely to get fully involved. And you know, an intelligence report suggested that the operation, the American operation, was not all that successful as the administration portrayed. And so I think, you know, the big question to this war is what happens with oil prices. And the fact that they've come down from their recent rally due to speculators and not to any real change in fundamentals suggests that even if there is more scrimmage between Israel and Iran, I don't think the U.S. is going to get fully involved. In fact, you know, just yesterday, Trump scolded Iran and Israel, and he made that a very specific point. And so I think Trump is sending us a political message that if other problems arise, that the United States is not likely to get fully involved.
And that brings us to another key comment by Trump. Trump reaffirmed support for Article 5 and has his tone at this NATO summit reassured allies, or are doubts about U.S. commitment still lingering beneath the surface, according to you?
Can you repeat that? I didn't quite hear.
So Trump has shown support for Article number 5, and do you think his tone has shifted towards NATO after this summit?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think, you know, that's good news. You're referring to the NATO allied members that have agreed to spend up to 5% of their GDP. This is something that Trump wanted even in his first administration and didn't quite achieve to get what he wanted. But I suspect that this time around he might. And so that's a victory, you might say, for Trump at this time. Now, of course, we just have to wait and see if they fulfill if their promises come to fruition. But that's good news, and I think that you know, the financial markets are likely to take that as a positive sign.
And now looking at Spain, Spain insisted that 2.1% defense spending is realistic and compatible with the welfare state. Is NATO unity at risk if countries set their own terms, also given that about Ukraine, some countries have shown support openly and some countries haven't?
Yes. Well, I think, you know, bottom line here is that the original hard stand taken by Trump against Zelensky has changed. And I think that was due to the fact that they did sign some sort of a rare earth minerals agreement. So I kind of think that Trump is likely to force the issues with our allies, but by the same time, if one or two are not in full accordance, I think that that's not going to change the fact that Europe, the EU in general, will continue to support Zelensky.
And now staying in North America, Canada's Prime Minister Carney said NATO should have held a special session on Ukraine. Is there a growing feeling that Kyiv is being sidelined diplomatically, according to you?
Well, I kind of think that that's probably the case. Canada's Prime Minister seems to pry on that, and so I think yes, it's a diplomatic effort that probably will continue.
And Peter, what is your reaction, and how is media covering over there, with NATO leaders praising Trump and fast-tracking defense commitments? How has the media narrative around this summit have been in U.S.?
I think it's been, pretty much fair. It's been very vocal on some of the positive marks and negative on some of the negative marks. So I think it's fair to say that pretty good.
And Peter, according to you, how has NATO's core purpose been reframed at this summit, from collective defense to a more transactional alliance influenced by Trump or U.S. power politics?
Yes, I think so. And again, any accordance without any major arguments flaring up amongst the allies, I think, is a positive sign. It's a positive. It's a unity sign, and that's positive, and that certainly was lacking in the in Trump's first term.
And how do you interpret the phrase that was used towards Ukraine, coalition of the willing for Ukraine? Is this a sign that NATO is informally splitting into tiers of commitment?
I'm not really sure how to answer that, but I would say that it looks as though that could emerge, and of course, again, it would be viewed as a positive.
Thank you very much, Peter Cordillo, for joining us today and sharing your expertise on this situation. Now we move on to our next story, Israel and Gaza. Gaza's Ministry of Health has said that attacks in the past 24 hours have killed at least 74 people and injured 391 people. At least 21 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli strikes near food aid centers in Nuseirat and Rafah. Many were waiting for supplies. Witnesses say Israeli forces opened fire without warning. In southern Gaza's Khan Younis, a bomb blast hit an Israeli armed vehicle. 7 Israeli soldiers were killed. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu called it a very difficult day. At a funeral in Tel Aviv, Israeli President Isaac Herzog asked for forgiveness on behalf of the state. He mourned Jonathan Samirano and others, saying Israel failed to protect and rescue them from Hamas captivity. Here's what the Israeli president has said.
ניצב כאן וכנשיא מדינת ישראל בשם מדינת ישראל. מבקש מיונתן ואיתו גם מעופרה ומשי האהובים סליחה. סליחה שמדינת ישראל לא הגנה עליכם. סליחה שלא הספקנו להציל אתכם מיד מרצחים. סליחה שלקח זמן רב כל כך להשיב אתכם מידי מפלצות.
Despite the increasing death tolls, US President Donald Trump highlighted what he described a great progress in Gaza, crediting recent US strikes on Iran for shifting the conflict. Meanwhile, US has approved $30 million in emergency funding for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, an organization supported by both the US and Israel, which currently manages most of the aid distribution in Gaza. However, the United Nations has expressed strong criticism of the system. The head of UNRWA labeled the GHF as a death trap and an abomination. UN officials have raised concerns that the militarization of aid distribution may violate international law and endanger civilians. Now we have guest joining us, Adrian Calamere. He's a terror scholar joining us live from New York. Thank you, Adrian, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Is the current military approach in Gaza achieving long-term security, or is it fueling deeper resentment that could prolong this conflict?
That's a great question, Asuma. Great to see you again. It really is grinding this conflict, and that's the problem with conflicts like this, is that you want a swift resolution to this, and that has not happened. It's been drawn out over the course of well over a year and a half. So does this breed more resentment? Yeah, we absolutely see this. We see this in the streets of America. We see this around the world. We see that actors are going to seize on the death tolls, whatever Hamas is putting out, that they're going to seize on the reports of shooting at aid stations, at places where people could receive food. So the longer this goes on, the more resentment will grow. And this is part of the Islamic Republic's playbook, is to keep Israel off balance. Now we'll have to see, now since we've seen the actions that the Israelis took against the Islamic Republic of Iran, does that shift their focus in the way they approached Gaza? Because that war isn't done now. They're still uncovering a lot of tunnels. They just uncovered a new one the other day. That was probably the biggest one they've seen. And so there's still a lot of work to be done there, which is the problem here.
And now, how does the killing of 7 Israeli soldiers in Khan Younis complicate the situation here, while leadership of military and political calculus going forward?
I don't think that will shift anything. If it would shift anything, it would shift the Israeli rules of engagement on the battlefield. But if for all the abuse that Israel has taken from the world about their killing of civilians and the civilian loss in Gaza, they have conducted themselves at great risk to themselves, where they have taken on much higher losses that were necessary. If let's say they conducted this battle the way the Iraqi Popular Mobilization Front did, with American help, to take over Mosul. That was against ISIS, and in that situation there were 600 ISIS fighters holding down 60,000 a population of 60,000 people. And they leveled the entire city. That was the order given down. And we didn't hear screams and cries from anybody anywhere. But that was a 60-to-1 civilian ratio there. So Israel has acted on a very, if you want to look at the rules of war, people say that they're breaking the rules of war. They just are not breaking the rules of war. If there are violations, they are investigated by the Israelis. The loss of these troops would, it would propel some leaders to say, you know what, we're going to go in there. This is total war now. We're just going to finish the job. But the Israelis will continue to go along and try and spare as many innocent lives as possible, while taking out the bad guys who are hiding directly behind them.
And building on that now, 7 Israeli soldiers, including a lieutenant, were killed. And does this point to an underestimation of Hamas capabilities on the ground?
No, I don't think it does. This is just basically what Hamas does. We have to look at the terrain that has become Gaza because of the bombing and trying to clear it out. It makes it place. It makes it a place that's great for snipers, great for ambushes, roadside bombs, these type of things. They understand urban asymmetric warfare and the type that Hamas uses, and that's they go into battle fully knowing what they're going to expect. The enemy always gets a vote, but Hamas is basically used. They've seen everything basically that Hamas can throw at them. These things happen in war. It's very unfortunate.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Dion Calamer, all the way from New York. Now we move on to our next story. Looking at Kenya, thousands of Kenyans took to the streets to mark 1 year since deadly anti-tax protests shook the nation. Police fired tear gas and water cannons to disperse crowds in Nairobi and other towns. At least 10 people suffered gunshot injuries, according to hospital sources. The government shut down live broadcasts from major TV stations, prompting outrage from media houses and rights groups. Protesters chanted "Ruto must go" as they pushed towards Parliament, defying barricades and a heavy police presence. Police struggled to control the crowds, with some officers forced to retreat. Here's what a protester had to say.
We are here as the young generation we want a complete overhaul of the system. The system is rotten, the system is wrong, and we want a complete overhaul. We shall speak, we will not be afraid, and we will turn up when it is needed.
The demonstrations also honored blogger Albert Ojwang, who died in police custody earlier this month. Protesters demand justice, police accountability, and President Ruto's resignation. The atmosphere remains tense, with reports of more clashes in Mombasa and other towns. Kenyan President Ruto urged Kenyans to remain peaceful, warned against violence and destruction, and said security forces are under strict orders to protect lives properly and uphold law and order. Here's what the Kenyan president has said.
And therefore, to every police officer, from the constable, the man on the beat, I give you my assurance that the government of Kenya will support you, will stand by you as you secure our nation and as you secure our country and keep our families safe and our properties safe.
Now we have guests joining us for this discussion, Muhammad Nuruddin. He's an African journalist joining us live from Ghana. Mahmoud, thank you for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. What more can you tell us about the situation in Kenya? And is there, since maybe there is media coverage still, or maybe there is not, can you tell us more about it?
Exactly a year ago, the Kenyan citizens, were angry that a bill was proposed in Parliament. And so the day the bill was proposed and passed in Parliament, the angry youth stormed the Parliament to register their displeasure about that bill. They were saying that life has not been better, and therefore if that bill is passed, then life will be much difficult to live in Kenya. So during that period of protest, there was a clash between the citizens and the Kenyan police, and over 60 people were killed and some were injured, sent to the hospital. So today is exactly 1 year that displeasure again, to tell the government that things have not changed. We are still experiencing the hardship in the country and they want a better life. And so if you monitor the situation, you realize that some of them were chanting "Ruto must go," and they want the government to do something better. And so that was exactly what these people went to the street of Nairobi and some part of Mombasa to register their displeasure where we had about 11 people who have been injured and they have been hospitalized at the Kenyatta National Hospital in Kenya. So in the course of this event, I mean, live broadcast of the situation was stopped, and journalists were unhappy about it. And so it means that they will not be able to get all the actions and be able to report what happened, especially just like what happened last year. They were not able to do that. And so live broadcast of the event was stopped by the security. And so journalists were not happy about it. And they think that this is not the right thing to do, because as a journalist, they were supposed to report the event so that people across the world would get to understand what is happening at that particular moment. And so they didn't, they were stopped, and they didn't have the opportunity to telecast live some part of the event during the protest. And so as we speak now, Kenyans are angry with the government. They think that much needs to be done to change their lives so that they would be able to live a better life. And so these are young people, very young people, some 24 years, 25 years, and they are not happy. They think that things haven't been better. They say they brought William Ruto to government to help change their situation, their living standard.
Mahmoud, can you tell us what triggered this anniversary protest? Was it purely symbolic, or is it because the situation did not change much in Kenya, or is it because the situation is maybe worse than a year ago? What's your assessment?
Well, you know, a few days ago, even this month, a blogger was died in his police custody, and then a few days ago, after that, one was also shot by a military. You saw the video on social media where the security personnel followed him, shot him, I mean, in public. And so these are things that happened close to the event that happened last year. You know, the event that happened last year was in June. So a few days to that year, the anniversary, they thought that it is good to go back and register our displeasure because things are not changing. We thought what we did last year could have changed things. But even in the month that the incident happened last year, I mean, we are experiencing a lot more hardship. So let's go back and register our displeasure and to commemorate the event or the anniversary of what happened last year. So you could see people holding roses, some of them, I mean, pictures of those who died last year, just to show that they are not happy about the situation. They are not happy about the events that are happening, because they could see that people are still dying in the hands of the police or in the hands of the security. And so these are some of the things that they look at them and say, let's go back and let the government know that things are not better as they see it, as the government see it, but they are seeing something different. So they need to prompt the government to be able to do things that would change their life and to be able to ensure that nobody is being killed again.
Thank you very much, Mahmoud Muhammad Nuruddin, for joining us today. Apologies for your visuals being cut in the middle. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.